I don't know that I had that type of foresight, to even realize how many things will come up in life. What I did for those first, call it 5, 6 years, almost impossible later in your life because I'm 22 years old and there's nothing going on. I was sitting in the office of the buyer who we were in escrow with, trying to get him to go non-contingent. I remember he had a TV on and it was like,
they are ping-ponging back off each other.
Lehman Brothers, collapses. That was the day that one of the tricks, the difficulties in LA is to be an investor with your own money on your own is extremely different.
Right.
They say date your cap rate, but marry your basis. That was my mindset. It's twofold. It's like, what makes something a good deal? Well, the first thing that makes everything a good deal is time. One of them told me, is like, look, you're young. And they both started in brokerage. Just like, they're looking at me like, hey, you're us 20 years ago, whatever. And they were like, and I remember one of the guys said, he was like, just invest in, as soon as you get some steam and you have some money, just invest in a deal a year. Make it a sole objective. Even if you're putting, $20,000 into a client's building, just do a building a year. Just invest in something. Force yourself.
Welcome to All Things Real Estate with Ari Wintraub, a show where we get to meet and learn from players within and around the real estate industry. An industry that provides incredible opportunity for creativity, entrepreneurship, and wealth building. Join me as we learn the tips and tricks from these insiders and helping us to carve out a space within this massive industry. Hey everyone, welcome to All Things Real Estate. I'm your host, Ari Wintraub, and I'm excited to be back today after a little bit of a hiatus to have my friend Morgan McMullin, a real estate investor, on the show. We're going to have a long conversation, hearing all about him and his real estate investments, how he transitioned from being a broker into being a full-time investor. And so without further ado, Morgan, welcome to the show.
Ari, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to get a chance to get to know you a bit
Yeah,
here.
absolutely.
So let's get into it and tell us your background, how you got to working in real estate and how it all began.
Sure. I'll do this as kind of elevator pitch as possible. Just like super quick snapshot. I grew up in Montana, went to UC Santa Cruz for college, and then followed my girlfriend when I graduated to Los Angeles, and that's kind of what led me here. I'm now married to her, and we just had our 15-year anniversary last Sunday, which we forgot about until Monday. So that's kind of the phase we're at in our relationship. I moved here. So I moved down here in 2005 after college, and I started cold calling apartment owners about a month and a half after I moved into LA.
Wow.
And so that was kind of the launch. And I chose from the beginning, the long-term objective was my dad was a contractor and started building properties for himself in Montana. I saw that real estate as something that, I kind of understood and could get my arms around. I wasn't really a super cerebral guy in college. So I was like, maybe sales could be a good thing. And ultimately, I kind of go, okay, well, what's the end goal here? I said, okay, I'd like to be an investor. I'd like to be an owner. Well, if you don't have money, and you don't really know what is a good deal or anything else or what you want to buy, how do you get there? So then brokerage seemed like as direct of a path as I could see to kind of achieve that objective. And so then it just became, learn the business, cold call, try to make some money so that you can start investing.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Who did you join? Were you at a brokerage for that?
Yeah. So I started at like a very kind of buttoned up traditional commercial firm called Investment Real Estate Associates. They're still around, and really, I have good relationships with the guys that are still there. It's a boutique firm. At the time that I joined, there's probably 20 agents, and everybody, for the most part, it was probably like just 5 or 6 new agents, and then everybody else is really like producing. And we're talking like suit and tie every day. I would wear my suit and tie and sit down and just cold call
Right.
for 8 hours and not see anybody and then go home in my suit and tie and do it over and over again, you know?
What was the first deal that you landed?
So my first listing was a 20 unit building in Highland Park.
Interesting. In
Yeah.
2005,
So
2006.
yeah, so I started in like October of 2005. That's when I started. And so this was 2006. So this
Yeah.
was late 2006. It
So
took
Highland
me
Park wasn't the hip, desirable area.
It was starting to have a little buzz.
Okay.
Obviously, it was a world of difference from what it is now, and it was in the and I forget like what they call it, but the lower part of Fig. So it wasn't up kind of by York where like it was starting to happen. It was kind of like still, um, not what it is today. But yeah,
A nice sized building.
yeah, it was a good size, deal, but at the time I think it was like $2 million for 20 units, 100 a door, just because that's what happens when you go back 20 years.
Yeah.
you know.
So that's a good start. So you're rolling with that. And how many years did you stay with them until?
Yeah, well, like anything, it was like again in order to become, to reach my objective, I was like, okay, well, you can't, you can't just invest in something. I play basketball, right? So if you've never played basketball before and you want to make, if you want to make 20 3-pointers in a row, you don't go out and start shooting 3-pointers, right? You like start by, dribbling the ball, and then you figure out, then you shoot reps, and then you work on the fundamentals of the shot, and then you go to free throws, and then eventually you work. So that was kind of like, that was the way that I was doing it, is like, okay, let me kind of build all of these skill sets, understand deals. And obviously, like as an agent, it's great because you're analyzing tons of property. And so you really get, because I probably did 20, proposals, we call them, like where you're doing an analysis for an owner, sitting in front of them and presenting these things before my first listing, And so you really get, it's incredible training for, and that's kind of how I viewed it, is like training, is like none of this, even if I don't get the listing, it's never a loss.
Right.
Because each time you sit down, you fine tune a skill. And so, I did that. And then my business started to really pick up, and, I was grinding at the time, like no kids.
Sure.
My girlfriend at the time was in pharmacy school. So she was studying long hours. So I just was at the office.
People don't realize how important it is when you're in that phase of your life to really capitalize on that time. The fact that you're not being held accountable, the money doesn't need to go to private school.
That's right.
When I got started, I would sort of house hack and then move every year. The fact that you can do that and get ahead, and you can work those long hours, those 14-hour days, it's so vital. And so that's what you were doing. You were analyzing these deals, and then you were starting to look at it, how you can invest.
That's right. Yeah, and just kind of getting a sense of different areas, because again, I'm not from Los Angeles either, so that was a learning curve of itself.
When you called in the guy in Highland Park, that was like your first time going out there.
That's
sure.
Right. Well, it was also my wife's first time, and she grew up in Santa Monica. So like, I was like, yeah, it's in Highland Park. She's like, what? Where?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, you West Side snob. But yeah, so I was learning that. But you're 100% right, and I don't know that I had that type of foresight, to even realize how many things will come up in life, and like what I did for those first, call it 5-6 years, almost impossible later in your life, because I'm 22 years old and there's nothing going on.
That's
like I have to pay for food and my rent. We were in it was a 3-bedroom condo that we lived in, and we rent in the two. We were just renting by rooms,
Sure.
So my wife and I rented one of the rooms, and we had 2 roommates in the other 2. So, yeah.
Don't fly these days.
No, and exactly. And you don't, you just, I didn't really even want to be at my house, so I would just go to the office and just bang it out,
So let's talk about the transition then. So when, after, selling these deals and brokering them and analyzing them and learning the numbers and learning the neighborhoods, did you feel the confidence to go out and make an offer on your first deal?
Yeah. And it's funny, like looking at, if you want to call it like sliding door moments or whatever, like forks in the road. And it's funny how these little tiny decisions that are made end up like shaping so much of your life. And specifically, so when I joined IREA, that's the acronym for the company that I worked at. They just assign you a product and an area. And that's kind of how it worked because, I don't know anything. So they're like, we're assigning you kind of East Hollywood, Los Feliz, Silver Lake.
Right. Good
apartments.
Good time to be in that
100%.
market.
And that's the thing is like, so much of not just my story, but I think so many agents' stories, it's just timing.
Right. Oh yeah, for sure.
And I knew people that could have been incredible agents, brokers, principals that just didn't ever, they came in at the wrong time for them in some way. Now, some people would argue maybe you find your way anyway, but whatever. The timing was pretty good. I do wish that it was a little earlier because, I really had, my first deal was 2006, 2007. Great. I'm figuring it out. This is awesome. Closing deals, getting listings. You start out as a junior senior situation. So you bring a senior agent on all of your deals. You split the fees 50-50 with them.
Right.
A very standard commercial way to start.
And then it's split 50-50 with the house.
50-50 with the house. Exactly. So
it's tough.
Yes. I mean, but now back then though, even relatively small commissions.
Yeah.
For me now were huge commissions for me then.
Most definitely. Yeah.
And so, so I started doing deals on my own. I remember in 2000, maybe like 2007 sometime, I got a little 12-unit listing in East Hollywood that was on my own. So then the global financial crisis.
Did you guys see it coming? I wasn't in the industry then. And this is a huge point in our history in the world.
Yeah.
So 2007, you're a young broker. You hadn't seen any other cycles. Things are just cranking. Did you guys see, were people talking about what was coming?
So great question. I was probably too, I couldn't see the forest through the trees. I was so young and so aggressively doing one thing. I'm sure people were saying stuff.
Right. Oh,
but
it's too coffee.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm 2 years in the business and I'm 24 years old. I don't have, so like, you'd have to ask that question to like the guys that were working that had started 15 years before me, because I don't remember, I don't remember anything specific.
So all of a sudden, what was the first sign that all of a sudden?
So I'll never forget, like I was trying to sell a building. We were trying to go non-contingent. It was actually 2 buildings. It was a brick building on Normandy next to a little like 50s building. I want to say it was like 10 units and 50 units, something like that.
One's gorgeous masonry and one's crap 50.
That's right. Yeah. Yes. Except for, the brick buildings have their own issues.
Studio unit.
Yes. But I was sitting in the office of the buyer who we were in escrow with, trying to get him to go non-contingent. I remember he had a TV on and it was like Lehman Brothers, collapses. And he was like, he's like, look, and there was, it was like, that was the day he was like, I don't know if I can buy this. And he ended up going non-contingent and somehow we closed the deal. And I can't really remember how or why, but I do remember that was like the moment in the day that it was like, it started. And I was like, this does seem somewhat significant.
Right. Okay.
And then I learned very shortly thereafter. So, okay, I'll rewind to, you asked me, first investment was in 2000, was before the collapse.
Oh, interesting.
So 2008, my wife and I bought a duplex in Los Feliz on Tracy Street, like Hyperion, and the whole.
But she was a West Side girl.
She was a West Side girl. She got into USC pharmacy. She's going to school out there, like
at Keck.
Well, I don't know if it's their campus is by the hospital out there, like it's in
East LA.
East LA. Yes.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and it's near Boyle Heights.
Yes.
Boyle Heights. Okay.
So
makes
it's
sense.
really close to where we were.
Yeah, Los Feliz Boulevard by the fly.
Exactly. We were right there. so we bought this duplex. It was tenant occupied. We did the whole owner financing, and it was like
And you took a unit through the
we wanted to.
Right.
So, and that was our first investment. We ended up, I'll just kind of I'll bury the lead. Is that the term? We ended up like selling that duplex like 4 or 5 years later at like break even because it went down and up.
Right. Right.
We bought it right before everything went to shit.
Yeah.
And
you guys couldn't get
so
your
because of
units
the
off.
timing, we were renting a 1-bedroom nearby, just like an apartment.
Right.
And we were going to move into the building, but then like the market collapsed. And so wife's in pharmacy school. She's got loans paying for that. I'm still, so my income goes from, I can't believe this is happening.
Right.
To, I'm 25 and I never thought it would happen this fast to like,
Right, exactly. You probably would have had to pay like some relocation money.
right. And the tenants
Fix up the unit. You'd probably need some capital to do that.
Exactly. And the two tenants, I remember it was, like approximately, they were each paying $3,000. So it's like a really cool post and beam, like 50s, gorgeous building. But they were basically at market. And so we were paying, I can't remember exactly, but like $1,200 for a 1-bedroom apartment. So I'm like, well, it seems like something bad is happening in brokerage.
Yeah.
Let's not get over our skis and like take over. Let's because the delta between 3,000, like it's better just to leave them in.
Yeah.
Let's just see how this goes. So we ended up never moving into that thing.
Right.
We just held it, and then got out of it when we could, because there was really, again, I bought that just because it was like it was owner occ and it was going to be like our house. It was like rent the other unit. So even though it was my first investment, I don't think of it as my first deal.
I love the duplex occupy. My buddy and I were just talking about it. He's done my whole blog and pitch, and I have as well. And I bought some FHA owner occupied duplex. I live in a duplex now that we rent out one of their units. It's a great way to get into the market.
Right.
You don't even have to be FHA. You can still just put 5% down. And so great that you were trying to take advantage of that.
Yeah. Well, incidentally, that was the only duplex that or it was the only one that I ever bought. Like nothing else. So then, we just apartment hop for the next however many years, and I'm just like, hey, I guess this is going to be on the back burner. Brokerage goes back to zero. I mean, so 2009 was, I worked unbelievable hours and was working much harder than I had the previous years.
Right. To do less.
And I did I did probably 5% of the business that I did in 2008.
Wow.
So it was brutal. But luckily, like my wife and I hadn't changed anything in our lifestyle.
Sure.
And so we hadn't so we were, I had made some money and had it just, kind of sitting and was being patient with that. So then in 2009, I got a listing with a gentleman that I had sold a building for before, and he's like, hey, I have to sell this thing. He was losing something else.
Right.
And so he had a 6-unit building.
The one that he bought with you.
He didn't buy it with me. I had sold something else for him.
Right.
And so I had listed something else.
But you liked it, wanted to use you again.
Yeah. And he called me. He's like, hey, I need to sell this thing. And it was a 6-unit building built in the 20s on like Melrose and Western.
Great.
Okay.
Melrose Hill.
Melrose Hill.
Were they calling it Melrose Hill?
I do not remember them calling it Melrose Hill. But so
and this is a great area. People
great area.
Ask me, where's the next West Adams? And I've been saying Melrose Hill could be, it's a small little area, but it's at the corner of Western and Melrose. There's an historic little pocket in the Northeast neighborhood at the corner.
That's right.
And so
that's right.
East Hollywood's getting a lot of attention.
It's got a lot of buzz. Yeah. And it was just starting to then.
Right.
And I remember, there was a new, at the time, condo building across the street, which was the only real development. Now that whole pocket, I mean, especially on Melrose, there's these huge buildings. Wiseman, they built some really
Right. As
gorgeous
you go more
ones.
west, closer to Larchmont, there's some nice new
Right.
buildings. Right.
And they've done those big fourplexes that became
Sure,
the craze,
condos, right.
because it's all already 1.5 zoning, and so those things made sense. So they did a bunch of those. So it feels very different than it did now. But I do remember the condo building. It was brand new then. Was like kind of a big deal. It was like, oh, look, like if they can do this, it's not, because the area at the time was, it's not bad, just
Right.
it didn't have like a wonderful warm feel or anything like that. So I listed this property, and I think I listed it for $650,000.
The 6 unit.
Yeah, it was like a 7.5 cap, something like that. And tried to sell it. I'm trying to sell everything. Nothing. There's no buyers. Nobody will buy anything.
Right.
And so we had an offer. I remember it was in the 400s, like 480. I went with the guy's like, my seller counters at 550 or 525 or something like that. And he's like, let's go see the building. So we go and walk the units. 900 square foot, beautiful, like you're all the 20s stuff.
Yeah.
The molding but super low paying tenants. They've been there forever. Building was needed. All the systems were, we found out later, like one of the bathroom sinks was just literally, there was
Draining into the soil. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
like
But it had some nice bones.
had nice bones. And so again, we had like an offer in the 4-ish range. He countered 550. That deal didn't work out. And so, again, let me kind of jump back forward. There was, I didn't make enough money to buy things by myself. Right. And that's kind of one of the tricks or the difficulties in LA is to be an investor with your own money on your own is extremely difficult.
Right. So it's to partner or not to partner.
Because you either did something in a previous job or something that made you buco bucks, and then you want to, and we see that a lot where people come in with, they sold a company or something like
Right. Right.
that, and they come in, they start buying buildings.
Yeah.
Or there's like it's family money, and you have that line. So, but usually you have to go find people that want to invest with you,
Right.
whether it's a friend, a parent, an uncle, whatever, a client. You realize, because you see it a lot, that, relationships aren't good enough to convince people to give you a big chunk of money. They need to actually believe that can we swear on this?
Yeah, of course.
What the fuck you're doing? Like you need to, prove that. And so that was part of my objective of learning the business is being able, because I knew at some point I was going to want to buy a deal, and even a $550,000 deal, I couldn't buy it all by myself.
Right.
I had to bring in something.
Did you guys buy this 6 unit?
So we ended up buying it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went to my client and I was like, look, I think it's a great building. Like, I don't know why it's not selling, and I did as much of because it's my listing. There's obviously a little bit of a
Yeah, you got to be careful.
You got to be careful. And I was very upfront, and I just said like, hey, like I'll do whatever you want, but like I'll buy it from you.
Right.
I think it's a great building. And he was like, I'd love to sell it to you.
Yeah.
So, so that was the first one, and then
And you bring a partner in on that?
yeah. So I just friends and family pari passu from 2009, just so that we don't get bogged down until 2021.
All friends and family.
Friends and family, pari
Investments.
passu investments, not syndication models.
Where's that term, pari?
Pari passu? I'm probably.
Is it like Latin or French?
Yes, I think it's Latin. It means, I'm using it in the phrase or in the way that you put in what you own, right? Like everybody,
Right.
If you brought in 50%, you own 50%.
For sure. There was no syndicator.
There's no
GP.
there's no
Right.
GPLP.
Right. Friends and family, you're all putting your money.
That's right.
Okay.
And then in 2015 at some point, like I still didn't understand the syndication model. But I would like buy deals, and when I would just take 5%. So I would put up 10% of the capital. And then we would, I had like a couple of, these were like family friends, whatever, that invested in these things. And then I would take an extra 5% of equity. That was kind of my promote, right?
Right. So if everyone was putting in they would only be worth 95%.
That's right. If it's exactly, if we're
And
rating,
so you were taking a 5% GP fee.
exactly. But it was just like just straight up from the beginning now. And that's not a very common way, as you know, to do it. But it was like my first, I still was not, I wasn't thinking of it as a business. I was just thinking like,
Right. Because it puts you in an equity position and it's not based on profits.
right. Your interests aren't fully aligned with the investor because in theory, if I'm me now and somebody's proposing that to me, it's like, well, and you're giving me all the control, it's like, well, if you sell it tomorrow, you make money.
Right.
I just give you my money.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's, I have.
Opposed to working for a profit paying us back first.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. But we didn't sell any of those. So and we still own all of those.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And how many units and buildings?
So yeah, we just started picking up like whatever I could, and I was still very, very much.
And you were buying stuff like, how did you do that with the 6 unit? So it's 2009.
Right.
I don't know what the environment's like. Are people still paying decent rents? Could you make money? Were the mortgages low enough?
So there was. Mortgages were low enough. The cap rates were up. I mean, it's worse now.
What were the interest rates?
The rates were 6.5,
and you're buying at 7.5,
and at 7.5 cap.
Yeah.
So you had positive.
So did you guys try and turn units?
I tried to buy out all the units. We had one vacate. I can't remember if it was vacant when we bought it. No, that can't be right. Okay. We've had 2 tenants move out in 20 years just to
of that 6 unit.
6. Yeah.
Right.
And it was natural. Like there was just natural turnover. Like everybody else is dying in that building. They're all wonderful people.
Yeah.
And I have like relationships with them obviously at this point.
And you're slowly raising the rents and you've improved the building.
Slowly. And especially now that they've capped the rental increases even more at City of LA, but we won't get into that too much. But yeah, it was the basis I remember was $100 a square foot. It was it was 5,200 square foot building.
Right.
And we bought it for $520,000.
And could you guys do like 65% loan to value?
Yeah, I mean at the time you could do. Yes, it was still the biggest. There wasn't really any change fundamentally pre GFC. It was like the loans, the percentage down was basically the same thing.
Right.
There was less lenders. There was a lot less, excitement about lending on property, but there were still lenders out there. There were still loans, and it was really just buyer appetite.
Right.
It just disappeared. That was the fundamental issue was, in 2009, everything was kind of like it wasn't okay, but our loans didn't change like the residential world did.
Yeah.
There wasn't any of this weird financing that people got stuck in, where it was like 10% down, and you could never do that in apartments since I've been in business.
Right.
It was always minimum 35% down. Even this was 2006, 2007. Maybe you get a really good deal. It's like 30% down, but it was, and again, like I'm sure that somebody listening to this is going to be like, oh, well, I got 25%, whatever, but it wasn't significantly different after the collapse or even now. It's kind of been pretty consistent with what banks want and need.
Exactly. Maybe on residential, they make more exceptions and because it's primary residence. Did you find people maybe after the financial crisis, like 2010, 2009, 11, 12, they had maybe gone in on a bridge loan, hoping to exit a building a certain price with like a 3-year high interest loan, and all of a sudden they couldn't find the rents and the valuations in order to be able to take perm financing?
Yes. There was a lot of speculation. So I remember specifically just to what I was working on at the time. And so, I bought that building literally like months later. I bought another building right by the LA Community College, LACC.
Oh, it was like Vermont.
Yeah, it's like Vermont and Melrose. It's literally on the same street.
The 101 freeway.
Right. It was a 6-unit building. It was a listed property by a broker, but it was $400 and some thousand. Bought that, figured that out, still own that. And so just started doing these because things were things were so much more affordable then,
Right.
like a broker's income was obviously less than what it is now because of inflation and everything else and values, but it wasn't significantly different. But the values got so cheap on these things.
Yeah.
Um,
And you guys figured if you guys could cover the mortgage and, increase rents a little bit, you might only be making a few $1,000
that's right.
a month,
That's
but you guys knew it was a long-term play.
That's right.
And the
Well,
basis was so good.
exactly. They say date your cap rate, but marry your basis. That was my mindset. Is, what? Well, it's twofold. It's like what makes something a good deal. Well, the first thing that makes everything a good deal is time. And so if you can hold on to things long enough,
The cap rate is going to
you're just and especially, I mean, the silver lining to rent control is that you're almost no matter what, because even if you have a tenant at market and that rent comes down, you have all of your other tenants way below market, so their rents are going up each year, and so you have increases. It just takes time.
Right. I love that analogy. I've never heard that phrase before. Marry your basis, date the cap rate, because I think that's a play on the residential, which is date the rate and marry the house.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
buy the house,
Right.
The rate now, people are buying at high rates,
Right.
but you're going to get a good house in a good area. You're going to commit to it for the long haul.
I bet. Yeah. Every industry has like it's like their version of.
I have a feeling the marry the house, date the rate was the first one.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Have you guys refinanced many of these that you were picking up in the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, we've had to, and there's, we've a lot of these things. I mean, there's buildings that we've returned, 4x on the original capital investment
Out of the refi.
out of multiple refis. Yeah,
That's phenomenal.
yeah. Like we have
Again, there it is, marrying the basis, buy a good basis.
That's right. So we bought like one that I was just looking at this loan, so it's kind of fresh.
Mm-hmm.
An 11 unit in K-Town that we bought for $1.4 million.
What year?
$1.3 million. I don't remember exactly, but probably 20. It was a little later, probably 2013.
Yeah, still very early for what was coming. In
Yeah,
K-Town.
and we put in $500,000 or something down payment to buy it, and we've probably at this point cashed out like probably like $2 million. I think our loan right now is like $2 million. So
right,
it's just been the refi and buy is a really good strategy.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll rewind to 2011. So 2009. It was nobody wanted to do anything. So you asked about like bridge financing and stuff, and everybody just kind of like, it was like duck and cover and like, how bad is this? So 2009 was terrible because nobody wanted to sell, and they were like, even if they were in a bad situation, they're like, we're going to hold on as long as we can because everything plummeted. We don't want to sell when it's low. We think it's low, and it was.
So no sellers.
And then no buyers, and so even when you had somebody that wanted to sell at the price that was market, it was really hard. And it was funny because most of the buyers were these old timers that had kind of been through a cycle, and they're like, the basis is good. I'm not nervous, but like the newer buyers, they were nervous,
Like for you.
Well, I was looking for any opportunity to get my hat in the ring, and so it provided that opportunity. So
exactly, it's sort of like the analysis paralysis, right? The people that have been around it too long, they know enough that they get in their own way. But someone that was just hungry, just want to deal, buying, of course, long term, you're going to win.
That's right.
You get in your own way.
Yeah, and I got really good advice on the first property. So I listed Highland Park, that 20 unit first, but the first building I ever sold was a 12 unit on Winona. It's like kind of like
so really good.
Yeah, it's like in that Hollywood to Hollywood Boulevard, about north of Hollywood Boulevard. It's like kind of East Hollywood-ish, and I closed that one first because I listed it right after the Highland Park one, but we had like a cash deal and it was quick. But the guys that bought that, it's these two guys, and they're still in the business today, and they're incredible. And I ended up doing a lot of business with them. But one of them told me, he's like, look, you're young, and they both started in brokerage. Just like, they're
Right.
looking at me like, hey, you're us 20 years ago, whatever. And they were like, and I remember one of the guys said, he was like, just invest in as soon as you get some steam and you have some money, just invest in a deal a year. Make it a sole objective. Even if you're putting, $20,000 into a client's building,
Right.
and if you have more than that, just do a building a year. Just invest in something. Force yourself to
Yes.
make that goal.
Right. Even if
And-
it's just 20K
And
on someone else's deal.
Always remember that, because
That is great advice.
so 2008, that was 2007 that he told me that, I'm sorry, 2006. So 2007, we bought the duplex, and I have invested in a deal every year since that time.
That's great advice.
And just because you realize that it is great advice, because all of that stuff just grows in a way that, again, there's just growth with time.
Yeah, compounds.
So what?
And it's like an athlete, showing up and training every single day.
Right.
And just to be consistent and to get into something, no matter how small it is.
Right.
And then, of course, by getting into one thing, even if it's small, like I invested in something small this year, just a duplex with some friends. But then because of that, and it falls short on my goal of unit acquisition and growth in terms of that. But because of that, then I got a call from a broker who saw that I closed on that, and then he has something bigger.
Perfect.
So it's that idea,
Love
but
it.
it's like an actor, a movie producer, a writer. You got to be doing something. Nothing comes of nothing.
That's right.
So get into a student film. Go and get into the festival circuit.
Right.
Write something, produce something, do a web series.
Like anything. Well, I thought of it so much more just like, okay, from a financial aspect, it makes sense, but that you're 100% right. There's also like a psychological
Yes.
aspect to it, because every year you're getting back in the water.
Yes.
You're doing it. And so just doing that, because, you're an investor, and if you remember how nervous you were
Sure.
for the first deal,
Right.
and kind of I get nervous like every deal. I'm
Right.
like, you do the whole
Especially as
thing.
more time goes in between them.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is like you want to keep those times like when the iron's hot, just strike.
Right,
Like
yeah.
it just go.
Great advice.
Yeah, it was really good advice, and I try to give it to all the young brokers that cold call me that I have relationships with. I try to tell them that all the time, and also just because, again, if you have time you're young, you have time as your advantage. You don't have to, it doesn't matter what the deal is.
Right.
Of course, you don't want to buy a deal that you lose or something. Like, don't do it like completely carelessly. But if you feel like it's good, just buy it. I mean, that's, and again, you're an investor, and this. We can only, and it goes back to the conversation about basis. That the only thing that you really know when you're buying an apartment building is that the basis is, or you should hope for, I guess I should say, the basis is lower than the comps, right? That's
Right.
the only thing that you can feel really confident in is where your basis is
Yeah.
in relation to the comps.
Yes, you can control that.
Right. So if you're buying something that's lower than the comps, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a good deal. It just means that you're lower than the comps. The deal, whether it's a good deal or not, comes down to so many other factors, and apartment buildings have a life of their own. Each building is its own business. It's set up with a certain set of tenants that are not the same tenants as other buildings, and some of those tenants are good, some of them are bad. Sometimes they move out, sometimes they don't move out. Sometimes they're horrible people. Sometimes they are litigious. And
Yeah.
so these are factors that can make deals good or bad.
Right.
The only thing that you really know is like getting comfortable with the process of it's a good enough deal now.
Right.
My basis is good. I like it, but whether it's a, single, double, or home run, that always remains to be seen, because some of the deals that I've thought were my best deals turned out to be fine, or even like a pain in my ass. And some of the deals that I thought were like whatever down the fair turned into just incredible deals for me.
Let's hear about one of those. What was one where going into it, you thought, okay, this is so-so, I'm not too sure about it. Let's cross our fingers. And then it
Okay,
exceeded your expectations.
Yeah, we just did it recently. So in 2021, I partnered with a really good friend of mine who we used to cold call together at IREA. He like sat in the cube next to me. I was in his wedding. We became really good friends. And we went separate paths. He got out of brokerage in the financial crisis, but stayed in real estate, but out of brokerage, asset management, and blah blah blah. And we always kept in touch. And then we came back together, and we had an idea from a long time ago. Or we were like, hey, we should buy deals together, and we buy well together. And so fast forward to 2021.
Not your first deal with him.
No, 2020. We were like, hey, let's raise some money. Let's do this. And he owns a management company. I want to be, I like to have some flexibility in my life and manage.
And you use them?
And we use them. Yeah.
Right.
And so we partnered up and we bought, about $50 million worth of real estate.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. From 2021 to the last one we bought was 2023.
Right. So how does that structure work? He brings some of his own investors and you bring some of yours. Yeah. Do you guys split up the GP according to how much capital you raise, each of you?
No, we just do 50-50. I don't like to blur those. I want it to just be like, hey, we're in this. Sometimes you're going to do more. Sometimes I'm going to do more. Sometimes you're going to do more work. Sometimes that.
But you're all picking your fair share. No one's bringing zero investors.
Correct. Well, it turns out, I didn't know this. I guess I'd sold friends and family on deals in the past.
Yeah.
But it turns out that I'm a convincing, I can raise money also. I wasn't really sure if I could.
I want to touch on that.
Yeah, but people, ultimately because people trust me, and that is 100% what raising money on these deals is, because usually the investors I'm keeping all of them under a maximum of 20%, so that they're not on the loans,
right?
So we had on the first deal, we probably had like 20 investors on a $2 million raise,
right?
It was like that type of deal. But I really enjoy the process of raising money, mainly because I believe in it. I believe in the property. I believe in us taking care of somebody's money, and these are all friends and family. These are not.
So this is going, okay. So I was going to say 20 investors that
we're jumping all over the place.
Right.
I'm sorry. You asked me a specific question, which I'll get to.
Yeah. Well, let's touch on that, and then we'll come back to the capital raising. So let's hear about it.
Yeah. So the deal, we bought a deal in Hawthorne that was just like, the basis was really good. It was way below the comps. Properties were selling at $300 a foot. We really focused heavily on 1980s buildings, AB 1482, California state rent control, not city of LA rent control.
Okay.
Hawthorne is its own city, so that was a bad example, but we bought a lot of our buildings are in the city of LA, but not subject to Los Angeles
rent control.
And so we bought this deal, and we were like very interested in Hawthorne. There's like some cool things. It's got like SpaceX is right there, and there's like some fun things happening. It's kind of really close to the beach cities, but it doesn't feel beach city. It's very just kind of, blue collar, working class, good, safe, not, just, it's workforce housing.
Sure.
And
maybe not as like run down as some South LA or East LA areas.
Yeah. No, just, and hardworking people, and, really nice tenants, and, nice vibes and all that stuff. So we bought this building, but it was listed by an agent that I knew. I called him, and, we always let the agent rep us. And so he was just kind of keeping us posted. And I'm like, look, I love the building, but I think that like the rents suck. The rents were terrible. All the tenants were paying about $1,000 for a 1-bedroom.
But it's not rent control.
It is, but everything is subject to California rent control.
Okay.
Everything. I'm sorry. Everything that's older than 15 years old.
Okay.
Right. Is subject to California rent control. So it's subject to California rent control. You can only raise CPI plus 5%.
Okay, so rent suck. You call the broker, like, we're not going to make money. This isn't going to work.
It's a 12 unit. It was a 13 unit building. It's 12 units plus one non-conforming. who just notified that he's moving out this morning, which is good.
You gonna get rid of the unit then?
Yeah. So everybody in the building was paying $1,000. Okay. We ended up buying this building, Ari, and we bought out a couple of the tenants with like very moderate buyouts. Like we were paying them, I think, $10,000 to $20,000.
Sure.
And we were getting, they were these huge 1-bedrooms that the layout was perfect, where they had this oversized dining area with a window, and it was always kind of like off the hallway.
Right.
And they had this huge living room and this huge kitchen, and
Perfect for making a second bedroom.
And so we just walled it off. We just dialed anytime we got a vacancy, we just dialed these units in. We went,
when you were buying, you weren't necessarily envisioning how amazing these 2 bedrooms were going to turn out.
That's right. I kind of, we scoped it out, and in the inspection, I was like, I feel like we can get like a good 2-bedroom in here.
But then once you did the first one, and what'd you rent that 2-bedroom
So
for?
we rented for $2,600.
Right.
Yeah.
So $1,600 more.
Yeah. $1,600 on and we were
in 10 months, you'll pay back what you paid for the cash and keys, and then another year you'll pay back for the renovation.
That's right. Well, a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yes, because we went, we put mini splits in them.
Great.
We obviously all new kitchens, flooring, and we make them really nice. But we ended up turning like almost every single unit
all 12
building.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those buildings where I'm just like, eventually it'll be fine. But in 2 years, our rents were up by something like 80%.
Amazing.
And so we were just like, wow, that.
And then you refied it?
We just recently refied it, and it basically took all of the cash that we thought we were gonna, just because rates were so much.
Right.
Because we bought it we actually got seller financing on it.
Oh, I love that.
She carried a loan at 3.75 IO for a couple of years, and then,
and lower down payment?
No, regular down payment.
No.
We put 30-something% down.
Why did you do the seller financing? That's what the rates were about then anyways?
Yeah, she was in line with the rates. And it's just so much easier, no points to brokers, no.
Yeah.
If a seller wants to carry it, as long as it's at market, you will do it 10 out of 10 times.
Right. Yeah. It's just
there's no appraisal. There's nothing.
Yeah. The brain damage from all the documents.
That's right. And most of these lenders now, they're so nervous about loans that you have like an annual, you have to supply all your financials annually.
That wasn't always like that?
No.
Okay.
And still not all lenders are like that. Like Chase doesn't do that with us.
Right.
But like some of these other banks do.
So what an amazing deal. So that's why you guys just refinance, because the seller
loans do. We reached out to her. We're like, hey, you want to extend it?
Right.
Well, we're going to bump it up a little bit. She's like,
so all of the capital you guys thought you'd be taking back out and repaying yourselves because the rate is so high.
Right.
To cover the debt service.
That's right.
You need.
But long term, like we'll be in a really good spot.
What loan to value did you get your new loan at?
The loan to value. Well, we got, we pulled out a couple $100,000 on top of the loan that we had, but it was like, I don't remember.
Yeah. Pretty standard.
Yeah. It was probably like 65, something like that. Yeah.
So what do you love about, that's an amazing deal. I love that, the value add that you guys added, you didn't, necessarily think that get such a great 2-bedroom unit, and then you get so many unit turns.
Right.
And you have the seller financing.
Right.
And the market's done well down there.
Yeah.
What do you love so much about raising capital, and what's your process? Like, I know you said it has a lot to do with trust.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because people want to see a good deal, but a lot of times the metrics, there's going to be some sort of uncertainty. And there's going to, be projections, and people are going to ultimately, trust you.
Yeah.
Because people realize there's no 100% guarantee.
That's right.
And so what do you love about it, and what's your process? Is it like a quick email? Are you sitting down having meetings with people? Tell me about all that.
Yeah. It was, it started as just phone calls or emails followed by a phone call. Like, hey, here's what this is, and here's kind of how it works. Just introducing a lot of them to the process. Some of the investors had done a bunch of these, and when you're raising money, there's just like such a huge, there's such a massive variety of like responses you get to this type of stuff, one of the easier raise people are agents, are brokers that I've either worked with or, done deals with, and they're great because usually they.
I know I've had a few of my, mainly residential colleagues at Sotheby's. We have offices in 100 countries, and I'm in touch with like thousands of brokers from different markets. And they've often like looked at my deals and see when I'm raising and have thought about it.
Right.
And I've always looked at them to be a good, prospect.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Well, and because most of these guys are in the apartment industry, the first thing they're going to do is just look at the deal and go, yeah, it's a good deal. And then that's pretty much the process, right? Like they just understand.
Those are easy.
It's the easiest one, right? So then the people that don't understand the business as much,
and they're smart because although they think, oh, I should be doing this, but they're taking the advice of your early mentor who said, make sure you're putting something in every year.
That's right.
They're having a good year and they're putting in 20.
That's right. And I'll tell you, after being the GP on a bunch of deals and being the LP in deals also, the LP position's pretty nice, man.
That's where the real wealth
I mean, I'm telling you, man, like sometimes I'm just like, it's a lot of work,
100%.
and you're working so hard,
and there's no guarantee that you're going to make profits to even.
So this perfectly dovetails with your question about raising capital, because I learned pretty quickly in this process that I really get a lot of fulfillment out of knowing that I'm like making these people that I like, in theory, like, or these are friends of mine, it's family of mine.
Yeah.
And so when I complain about being the GP, I'm making money for them. I'm working for them, and I like that.
Right.
If I'm working that hard for an a faceless investment group, which my partner and I were presented with that opportunity, just kind of like, hey, why don't you guys go after bigger stuff? We'll write the check, but here are the strings attached. It's not as interesting to me.
Interesting. Do you try any with them?
No, I really have no interest. It's
Right.
because I'm trying to keep at this stage of my life, got 2 young kids. Live work balance is like super, everybody that knows me knows. And
the first time I met you,
that's right.
I mean, you were very protective of like, you're like, hey, I'm kind of trying to, you wanted to sort of claim as like retired a little bit.
Right.
And you're golfing in the morning time.
Right. I love, my wife obviously doesn't, she still works like a full, like 9 to 5.
Oh yeah.
She grinds away, and she kind of, she's like, hey man, why don't you work a little harder?
Right.
Like, but why? I'm enjoying it so much. And that was also like a huge objective of mine of becoming a principal, was freedom of schedule, and I knew I was going to have to work really hard to get that. But once that opportunity arose, certainly there's people that are much more driven than me, that are much more successful than me, because
but they might not have that balance.
And I don't know if they do or don't. It's just, I don't know.
They might be sitting at the dinner table hacking away on their computer.
It's wiring, and, and I'm so, it's such a rat race, especially in LA. And there's so much of the, there's so much wealth. And if you run in the circle of these, like, real estate guys, there's so much wealth that if you're trying to keep up with the Joneses, it is an impossible race. You will just run, you'll run and run and run. So, and I've always said, like, I'm not wired like Kobe. Everybody thinks that they want to be wired like Kobe, but Kobe was wired differently. And he was really like, up until he retired, I don't know how happy of a guy he was,
Right.
And so I don't know Kobe. I'm making up some big assumptions, but I was more like Shaq, like I had some physical gifts, but but I didn't work out that hard once I'd made it, like I'm sure Shaq worked really hard when he was younger, but like once he got there, he's like, let me enjoy this, and so I really do keep that in mind.
Right. And so that's why, your brokerage business that you manage a team, you're not working those deals. It's not a full-time thing. And so that was part of that decision, put brokerage in behind you and really put your time and your focus into managing deals. And it sounds like when they're your investors, who are your friends and family, you're going to be more passionate about serving them.
That's right.
And justifying that the trust that they give to you. It's beautiful. So let's not skip the main question.
Yeah.
When I met you,
Yeah.
the day you were closing Escrow,
Yes.
which really was the impetus for this, interviews. I want to hear about the hardest deal you've ever done, and it took about a year, right?
Okay, so I'll try to make this as short of a story as I can. So, I think it was like 6 years ago, and this also folds back into the conversation about our Hawthorne building was one that we didn't think was going to be great, and turned out to be great. There was a single tenant drive-through in Lincoln Heights that came on the market.
The single tenant drive-through, so a fast food chain.
1,700 square foot little drive-through on Broadway, and Broadway runs into the freeway, into the 5. It's kind of it's the heart.
So Broadway that goes through downtown.
I guess it probably keeps going. Yeah.
Yeah, where all like the theaters are, the heart of downtown.
I mean, this is Lincoln Heights. So it's like you cross, from downtown, you're going northeast, and then it crosses the 5. And Broadway is the main retail artery in Lincoln Heights. And this is really close to the USC campus and right there, Boyle Heights and all that.
So East LA.
East LA. And so this property came on the market, and a buddy of mine
6 years ago.
A buddy of mine, an agent that him and one other guy have a team together right now. And
your brokerage business, right?
Yes, exactly. And my brokerage business is kind of, for me, it's like I just hang around the rim. I go there pretty 3-4 times a week, into the office. I like to just hang around the rim, see if any rebounds come off, like it's also just, I don't want to sit in an office alone or,
add some value. They can bounce ideas off of you.
Right. And find deals and talk to the agents, and and I'm a people person. So, my wife works from home, and I don't know how she does. I'm like, well, don't you want to talk to anybody? She's like, no, I don't.
Right.
So okay.
You're not required to go in, but you're going in, and you're benefiting from it.
I enjoy it. So anyway, so my partner in the brokerage was like, hey, there's this deal, and it looks pretty good. Cool.
Very rare. I mean, from all the stuff you've done, apartment buildings, not the normal asset class.
Right. So me, and we go, well, this isn't quite like perfectly up our alley. Let's talk to our friend who is in the retail business.
They was just listed with someone else, and they
listed with somebody else.
Who can we find to buy it?
Yeah, we knew the agent really well. We had a good relationship with him, so we reached out to him and like, hey, what can we do? How can we get this? So we brought in a third partner who does retail leasing and in LA at a really high level, and so the three of us just bought it. Pari passu, just thirds. I'm a little bit of I'm very hands-on, I'll put it that way. So I take the manager position of all the LLCs that I'm involved in, even if I'm not getting any additional benefit. I just I like it to be like that because I get frustrated otherwise, because I'm like,
you got to sign everything, all the docs,
I'm very
contracts.
And usually people are okay with that, because
they might be hands on, with the contractors or leasing or property management. Okay, so you guys have three of you are gonna buy it. How much?
We get hard money. It was like it was just under $1 million. Okay, so
and how was the
bite-sized deal? It was a mom and pop, like burger taco joint mix.
Some parking.
It was like a son mother type situation. They were really nice. So we're all like gung ho because we're running so our partner Mike he's like, look, we can lease this for. I think we were asking $7,500 a month.
Okay.
Triple net.
Okay.
So it's like a 10 cap not a 10 cap, a 7.5 cap, at what more than that. Yeah, I'm doing my math wrong in my head. But it was
good.
It's like
good cap rate.
It's in theory, you find a good solid corporate tenant or
so the mom and pop, the current,
they were moving out.
They were moving out.
Yeah.
So you guys were gonna spruce it up.
We wanted a tenant first before we spruced it up.
Okay.
Because we were like, hey, maybe we don't want to spend money and then have the tenant come in and
Right. Yeah,
leave
exactly.
change.
And then ask you for TI.
Yeah, first big mistake was the mother and son. They were like, "Look, our business isn't doing well. We have to close," and they were paying, call it, I forget, but $5,000 a month or $6,000 a month.
This already owned it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And they were like, "We have to move out." And we knew that they wanted to move out.
Sure,
So this
okay.
was like not a surprise. They just operated for, I can't remember how long, but 4 months afterwards or 5 months.
Okay.
We, in retrospect, should have let them stay for free. And this is something that I will always we should have charged them $1,000 a month because, and if done whatever we could, because the bane of my existence became having a vacant property in Lincoln Heights,
Oh, wow.
because
$1 million drive-through.
it turned into a crack den. Everything got broken into so many times already.
Right.
So okay,
And
so
neighbors are calling, complaining.
I'll get into that.
Okay.
But like so we buy this thing, and then tenant moves out. We put it on the market for lease, and we're getting bites and it's going well, whatever. But it starts getting broken into, and we're like, okay, this is a problem. We got to rent this thing quickly. We have a couple of leases we get close on, something doesn't happen, whatever. And it turns out we're getting like we were hoping for a big corporate, but it used to be a Taco Bell at one point. So we were like, maybe we have a Del Taco that moves there or something, and we start getting some bites. But then like every week, every month, it's like something, hey, they ripped open the electrical box, and they stole the meter, and they stole the wires, and at one point they stole everything, and there was just exposed electric, so we had to have like DWP cut the power at the top.
Right.
And like, we were like, dude, somebody's gonna get killed here, because it was like they were stripping everything out of they're tagging it like crazy.
Yeah, and it's like way the other side of the county for you to have to go out
exactly there. And literally they tag it, and I get a notice from the city. And this is like part of the problem is, it was like, we're trying to lease this thing. It gets broken into. We can't keep the people out.
Right.
When I say that, we put, locks and fences, and they're coming with heavy equipment, cutting through metal,
Right.
cutting through. They have saws, and
For sure.
this is not like somebody was just wandering by and
Yeah.
kicked out a window. It was like boarded
You
up.
spend money to
It was crazy.
fortify it.
Yes. So it just kept getting broken into, and we keep getting notices from the city. And so finally we get really close with a couple tenants. We get approached by, after it kind of gets like, it's pretty fucked up at this point, like, and it's looking pretty bad. We get approached by Fox, the studio, and they're like, hey,
Oh my God.
they're like, hey, we'll, we have this show, and the show is called Snowfall, if you've ever seen Snowfall.
I'm not a big TV guy. Yeah.
Snowfall was about the cocaine industry in the 80s?
Sure, yeah.
Whatever, and like,
Sounds right.
so we're like, oh, okay, well, interesting. Like, sure. We're like, well, we really want a long-term tenant, and they wanted it for a year.
Okay.
And they were like, we want to film there, and we're like, okay, well, we negotiate. They pay us $11,000 a month. We're like,
Double what
amazing.
you thinking.
No, yeah. I mean, not quite, but like, yes, enough that we're like,
No TI budget. You don't have to do anything.
just go in. They don't need power. They're like, we'll use generators.
Amazing.
So we're like, amazing, let's go. So we rented these guys, but this was like, we're approaching like 2018 or 19, right? Or it's probably 2018.
Oh, I thought you guys bought it at COVID. Okay.
No, this was,
Okay.
it was before.
Right.
It was before that. So anyway, they end up filming it. It's one of the characters' crack dens, which is hilarious because it was actually being used as a crack den.
Yeah, good cast.
So yeah, I was
Straight out of Central Cast.
yeah, I was like, they didn't have to do anything to it. They just walked in like, perfect, start filming, So they rented it from us, and again, so then they end up moving out, whatever. They finish up their show.
Yeah.
And
Did they tidy up when they left?
no, there was nothing. Yeah. It was literally just like, and so at this point, again, it's like tagged, but it was like worked perfectly for that. It was fun. I ended up watching the show because of this. And then
that's
saw it.
That is an amazing thing about real estate. Like, you never know where it's going to go and the amount of uses and how you can pivot. You can turn an apartment building into a TIC.
Right.
you could, convert a shopping mall in Rancho Park to become a Google campus, then becomes UCLA.
Yep.
And so you guys were in a bad spot. Fox, kind of bailed you out. Never would have imagined that.
Bailed us out. It was a bit of a gift and a curse because they moved out and then COVID hit.
Right.
Like shortly thereafter.
Opposed to having, if you would have had a drive-through tenant, it could have been a good business.
And then we were trying to figure out a way to get that, the government to rent it as like a COVID testing, drive-through, but it kind of fell flat. But so
you guys are servicing a loan.
We had hard money on it.
Ooh.
Yeah. Which then the guy was a buddy of ours, and we had him for a year. It was just a 1-year loan, but then he extended a little bit for us. And then eventually he was like, "Hey guys, I want my money."
Sure.
And so I ended up, probably a bad investment decision, but I had a line of credit on my house with a super low interest rate.
Yeah.
And we were paying him 7.5%, something like that. And so I pulled the loan. We wrote down the loan a little bit just to reduce
Sure.
liability. I lent the partners. I took over the loan.
Sure.
And then I basically just tapped my credit line.
Yeah, maybe you made a couple basic.
Exactly. I ended up making, I'm paying a third of it to myself. So
right.
I'm
but better than 7% when you're paying the hard money.
That's right. Yeah, no, and I was just I was making the delta between my credit line, as long as I didn't need that credit line, which I didn't,
right.
Which was good. But if something had come up and then I had needed it and I didn't have it, that would have been a bigger cost to me.
So it was harder to rent it during COVID.
So we don't get anything for a long time, like a year and change, So finally
And how are you guys feeding the mortgage payments?
Feeding. Well, first of all, we made decent money from
right. So you had that.
So we had a little bit of a cushion, but we're when we're
all
out
chipping in.
Yeah, we're just coughing up capital call.
Were you guys ever thinking of trying to sell it?
We started to have conversations about this at that time. I think we put it on the market for lease and sale, around $1.5 million, because I loved the real estate. I was like, this real estate's something I want to own. It was also different than a lot of the stuff. I've done some retail. I did a little retail place in Inglewood that we bought and sold and made a couple of bucks. I had invested in some 7-Elevens with a guy that I worked with that we did well, but we sold everything. So I was like, this was one that I was like, dude, we're going to rent this. And, I know I have enough single tenant clients that they're like, why would you ever own apartments?
Right.
But if it's working, it's working. But literally what happened to us is the exact reason why I was always nervous about doing single tenant, because you have one tenant.
That's right. Yeah.
And the desirability, it's not like apartments in LA, it's it's harder to find a match,
right. It's easy when you have the tenant there. It stays.
And I will also never forget, because my wife is involved in our business. She's not super involved in the sense of she is not I'm not hey, but she knows everything that we're doing, and she's
right. And you can run things by her.
Yeah. She through a lot of the stuff, she's like, I have no idea, but every once in a while she comes with a nugget of
the fresh perspective.
And it's so funny because I'll never forget, she was she went there and the drive-through is around the back. In this part, there's a cinder block wall at the neighbors, and then our drive-through. And she was like, she has really bad car awareness.
Okay.
She has no idea where the right side of her car is.
Okay.
It's just so whenever she's trying to park, I'm like, what are you doing? Do you have no idea? No clue. So she was struggling she's like, that drive-through made me so nervous. I thought I was going to hit the wall, because
that's not good.
too
Yeah,
narrow.
right.
And so I was like, I did it. I'm like,
sure.
But
that's
really
you,
good.
right.
I have really good car. Turned out to be a bigger deal than I had expected. We had a lot of tenants that were like, drive-through's really narrow, I'm like,
right.
Anyway, so we end up signing a lease with a tenant who they're going to sell Mexican juices and a little bit of food and, and great tenant. And they had 10 locations.
Oh, good.
This was going to be their flagship. It was going to be their first freestanding. They had been in mostly malls and strip centers, and we were all excited about it. We got our rent. We signed the lease. They give us a big chunk of money up front. And then to just fast forward, they then were, it took them 2 years to just try to entitle the property to get it like just renovated.
Oh, wow. That's a long time.
It was a complete incompetence by the city of LA, which you can save that for a separate podcast. But the inability, it's just crazy how difficult things.
And this is like a juice sandwich place. They didn't need a fryer.
It's so simple. They weren't tearing down walls. They weren't changing our footprint. They were just wanted to renovate, and it took them 2 years to get. And I might be exaggerating a little bit. Maybe it was a year and change. They got their permits. They started work, but then the inspector comes out. Oh, you guys need a new water line, and they were new to this because they had only renovated.
Which didn't help. Maybe they could have had.
That's right. It was
someone helping them through it.
Exactly.
And were they paying rent during that period?
They paid us rent. It was something like they paid us, I want to say it was like $100,000, but then we had like a TI budget.
Mm-hmm.
So they prepaid rent, and then we had to reimburse them for TI at some point once they moved in. And so they had a free rent period, and then rent kicked in. It was kind of a.
But they couldn't put it off. They had to put
basically like after multiple years, and then what
sad.
happened once?
That's
and,
so sad.
And we kept getting broken into. Once the construction started, it's mostly like homeless people. They stop breaking in once they see stuff because you've got a crew showing up every day, right?
Yeah, of course.
So it stopped for a while, but then they started construction. They like gutted it. You started renovating, added, they were drywalled and everything. And then they got to a point where they had a problem with, and they finally just threw up their hands. We're like, they were in way too much money.
So then what happened?
They buy themselves out of the lease because they had a 10-year lease with us. So Mike, our broker, did a really good job negotiating. Like all said and done, he did a really good job of making us like somewhat hold through this process.
Right,
like,
but giving them some relief.
But like, I'm getting all the calls. I'm getting calls from the neighbors saying that somebody broke in again.
Yeah.
I'm getting called. I get like tagged on some Instagram account that like is like, Beverly Hills investors running a crack den, clean it up. There's here's a picture of them, a mattress. I'm like, you think it's my mattress?
Exactly,
And by the way, this was during the time that the tenant we had a lease with them. It's not even it's the premises are not ours. They are in possession.
It's a tough time. Law enforcement probably wasn't able to enforce much. We had a bad DA. And so fast forward. So then what happened?
So we buy them out, and then the place just turns into it's just a shit show. Like we have a guy move into it. I go there one day and I'm like, is somebody in here? I'm like, what the fuck? They had broken through something, and I'll never forget. It's like pitch black in there because we boarded up all the windows, and I'm walking through with my little.
And someone's in there.
And I turn a corner, and there's a dude standing there with a hatchet.
Oh my God.
And
Morgan.
I scurried out of that place like as fast as you wouldn't believe. I hit this. There was just a little gap that I had to crawl through because he had broken through it, and I just fucking shot through that.
Yeah.
I was scared. Call the cops, but then before the cops come, he leaves. I'm like trying to track him down. Another guy moved in. At one point we had this dude that was just living in there, and I went in and like kind of made friends with him,
Like, I was here to get the mail.
I'm like, hey man, and he had all these.
We're here showing tomorrow. Can you clean up?
Ari, it was crazy. He had all these booby traps set up, and I'm talking spikes and glass. He's like,
wow.
He's like, people keep breaking in there, and I'm like, you broke in. This is not. But I'm like, I gave him like $20. I'm like, hey, look, man, I'm gonna leave you here just so that you keep other people away.
There you go.
But then at some point we needed access, and he wouldn't leave, and we had to call the cops, and they took him. But then,
did you guys ever rent it up?
Never rented it.
And then you just sold it.
So yeah, and so we were like getting like on this like we were getting like brought up on this Instagram thing. The city, we had all these violations from, we have the violation. It's like
nightmare.
We kept getting, you get a violation for graffiti, and I'm like, I go and paint it. Guess what happens the next day?
Exactly.
It gets tagged again. And we're building walls with razor wire, and people just cut the razor wire or cut through the wall.
Not what you signed up for.
It was such a mess. We ended up hiring this like a private security guy that would
Sure.
go by, and he's like a very scary dude.
Now I know why people have those cars.
Yeah.
all over.
And we had at one point, so during this process, and this was probably earlier this year, somebody kept breaking in when the security guy was telling me and whatever, and we kept like bolting it up. Finally, that whoever was breaking in went and poured a bottle of vodka in a hole in the wall and started on fire. So I get a call, the building's on fire. And
Great.
and
You're going to be paid out and done.
and the structure, like, by the way, like the structure's fucked up, but like the roof was brand new. We had put on the roof. The roof was brand new. They had insulation and stuff that hadn't been, drywall was still like intact, whatever. The fire department, it was a small fire.
Right.
The fire department, whatever, they say they're there to save lives. They went and just destroyed.
Right. Sure. The
the
roof. Yeah.
They cut giant holes in the roof. I'm like, bro, just throw a blanket on it and move on.
Yeah.
Like it was not,
Right.
it wasn't a big fire,
Right.
but again, they don't care about my property value.
Yeah. So what ended up? So you had put on the market this year.
So we put it on the market a couple of years ago. We then opened Escrow with a group that wanted to put a drive-through Taco Bell back into it. And it was a development company there's these developers that are kind of like have partnerships with these.
Right. And they know how to build it
They'll
exactly for them. Right.
Exactly. And so we're not selling it to a Taco Bell operator. It's just these guys have a relationship with them.
Yeah.
And so
Decent price. You're
we sold it for like $1.5 million and change.
So it could be like a break even.
Escrow was long. We had 9 extensions because they were trying to get through a certain number of entitlements,
And it's very specific. They know what they need to do in order to succeed,
right?
Because they've done it before,
right?
So
and
it's a blessing and a curse.
And it made sense that they're like and they kept putting in like incremental deposit increases. We got them at some point. They were just releasing it to us, but they couldn't close because they're like, if we can't do what we're gonna do, we're gonna just walk away from the deposit. Like we're not gonna take $1.5 million hit. We'll just take $100,000 hit,
right.
On that.
Yeah.
So it just, and so we were trying to put pressure on them, like, come on guys, just close. And they're like, we don't know if we can do our business model.
Right.
And if we can't,
They know the business model more than anyone, which is
right.
great because they have a model, but it made it very challenging. So eventually they pulled it off. They were releasing deposits to you guys. In the end, is it a break even if you bought it for $1 million?
We made a couple bucks.
Made a couple bucks.
I mean, but not worth
Unbelievable.
the number of times I got called from that building was, and just, it was one of those things that, and then I had my loan that I wanted my money back out of
right.
it, because I had paid off my line of credit because the rate went up. And
sure.
So I was like, well, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So
now you're a lender.
I paid that off with cash. I just had this loan that I wanted back. And look, it is and one of our other friends, so our partner Mike, his uncle is kind of a big time guy in real estate. He's a huge developer and stuff.
Did he put money into the deal?
No, it was just the three of us. We just,
okay.
Because we put in, I want to say, originally it was $75,000 each.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. His uncle knew the whole story. And he told another friend of ours, and I thought that, and I remembered this because it kind of made me happy. He's like, those guys, I give them a lot of credit. They haven't turned on each other. They're not
you guys,
us, the
right.
3 partners.
That was the response when he heard this.
Yeah,
story.
He was like, dude,
oh, you're so many stories. A guy wants out.
He's like, I'm in hundreds of partnerships, and the fact that those guys, and it was, like that we kept our cool. We just kept moving forward. And
right. No one blamed anybody.
Yeah. It just,
I love that.
Yeah. We kept it. And so,
it's like in anything, relationships are easy when everything is fine.
That's right.
It's like with your partnership at home. Everything is great when no pressure, but when someone loses their job
in there,
and then a kid with,
some health issues,
mental health issues, exactly. Health issues. And then you see how well the relationship does.
That's right.
And then the finger pointing. And so that was the great thing that you guys displayed, is that ability to stay together. And obviously you just kept showing up. It was not what you signed up to be doing.
That's right.
To be driving out there and dealing with
And
machetes.
And really, you can't. It's difficult, and I've learned this, and I learned this on, from a guy that I invested in one of those 7-Elevens. He told me, because I was just
You're a passive
I was
investor
a
on it.
passive investor in it, and I said something like, he's like, look, I have all the, and he just said it very simply. He's like, I get to make all the decisions.
Right.
Like if I want to sell it, if I want to refinance, it's my decision. Even though there was 10 of us that invested in it, something like that,
Right.
And he's like, you can't have it. You can always take other people's advice, but there needs to be one person that makes the decision.
Right.
Because it's just, it's convoluted. It doesn't mean you can't take advice from your partners,
right.
And that's the thing, is that in a perfect partnership, one person makes all the calls. It doesn't mean they're a dictator. In a good partnership, they're going to say, "Hey guys, what should we do?" And then, if you can't come to an agreement or something, then you make the decision.
Exactly.
But usually, a good manager of those will be like, "Hey, let's make a decision collectively," and then they go and make that decision.
Right. Exactly. But you guys acted as a whole, and you made the right decisions, and you just kept showing up.
Yeah.
And
a lot of work,
owning
man. It was not fun. And I definitely, I risked my, at least my safety a couple of times, to the point where I'm like, shit, man, I shouldn't.
Now I know when I met you, which was not that long ago, no more than a month or so ago,
how relieved I was.
How relieved you were. And how I said, oh, tell me the story about this deal. You're like, I can't. It's too long.
Yeah.
We'll have to catch up.
Yeah.
And we'll do it. So I'm glad we found a chance to catch up and get to know you more. But before we go, I have these 4 questions I like to ask every guest. So where do you see yourself in 3 years from now?
Similar trajectory. I am in a position right now where I'm looking for my next thing. And when I say that, it's, my next real estate thing. I've got a couple of ideas, and it may get, totally, I want to do something that I put a larger chunk of my own money into, and am more kind of like personally invested in it, because the GPLP thing kind of, I turned into a bit of a slave to those buildings because our timing wasn't great, but we're doing well because I'm working so hard on them, and my partner's working so hard on them. But I want to do something a little more, like, call it pet project, something like that, maybe an apartment building, maybe
where you're like
development.
Not necessarily on the timeline of the agreed to partnership and having to, make certain returns and hit certain parameters.
That's right.
Whereas like a pet project, you're controlling it and getting to do it as you like.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, honestly, more of the same, Ari. It's like, I'm really happy with the trajectory of my career, and I just want to be, just like doing a little more traveling and more, and I already do what a lot of people would consider a lot, So.
Yeah. Do you picture the pet project being within residential?
Potentially, yeah. I've got my eyes on some stuff.
Out of state
Development. No, I mean, I've invested, like, I have a brother that lives in Salt Lake City. We own some stuff together out there. And then, again, I grew up in Montana, so have some land out there. But aside from that, no, I don't really have any. I'm bullish on LA, man.
Love it. Well, I'm excited to see where the pet project is and where you are in a few years. I should have asked the first question first, but what would you maybe have done different going back 10 years?
Great question. I would have launched the syndication way earlier.
Right. Opposed to just doing
my partner and I. Now, it's easier said than done. I think that timing, like we said early in this
syndication being different than before. What would you call it? The Perry
Pass. I would have just bought everything in 20. It figured out a way to buy everything, and
raise money for it.
Yeah, the guys that bought.
Does that mean differently? Like that you would have had a role as a GP and taken profits for it?
It didn't matter.
It wasn't about that.
Buying, I did well. I was very happy that I bought stuff in 9, 10, 11.
But you would have bought more, and you would have done the GP thing to have done that.
I would have figured it out. I would have, if I could do it differently.
Right.
Now, obviously raising money wouldn't have been as easy for me because I didn't have the skill set that I had 10 years after that.
But you maybe would have worked hard.
But I would have just figured something out, because the people that are my age that bought more are
Sure. And there's a lot of people that bought way less.
That's right.
And that was a mentor of mine that told me when I asked him, what would he have done different? He said he would have bought more apartment buildings, which he started doing later in life. And then I took his advice and started trying to buy more. Now, what favorite book, movie, or song?
Do I have to just choose one?
Or you can give me a couple. Yeah.
Book, I'll be terrible because I do read books, but the times that I remember the titles.
Right. That's okay.
I recently read one that I really enjoyed, but now I can't remember, The Sinner's Bleed or something like that. But it was a really good.
Was it a self-help book? Or
No, I'm not a big. I'm a read for entertainment because I read for somewhere between 2 and 10 minutes before I fall asleep.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And
the same way.
And then I take my book on every vacation that I go on, and then drink tequila the whole time and
exactly. Then take it to the next one. Yeah.
Page.
So other than Snowfall, favorite show?
So I'll give you favorite movie.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just gonna throw like a couple of that are my vibe. Like In Bruges is up there.
Oh right.
And then
Colin Farrell,
great. Like
you kind of look like him.
I'll take that as a compliment. Maybe like some Thor Ragnarok. I'm a really big fan of.
Nice list.
It's okay. Yeah. Okay. That's my answer.
Beautiful. And what's it all for? What's your one thing? Like, why are you doing this?
Just freedom of time. And that's always been the objective for me, is to create as passive of income as I can, and then continue to work, but enjoy doing what I'm doing for work. And then just be able to have a friend call me and say, let's go to France next week for 2 weeks, and say, that's the goal. That's the end goal.
Love it. Good for you, man. And it seems like you're achieving it. So congrats.
Yeah, close. Not quite there yet.
All right. Good for you.
Hopefully my wife doesn't listen to this,
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.